Anusha Bajpai from Studio Lotus. Having studied and practiced architecture in India, Singapore, and the United States, Ms. Anusha Bajpai has a diverse global experience. Over the last decade, she has worked with large scale commercial firms and research driven boutique studios on a wide range of projects. At Studio Lotus, Anusha has been leading teams across a spectrum of building typologies, including a technically complex six-acre mixed-use development for DLF in Chennai and a multi-story commercial building in Bhubaneswar, as also a 35-key jungle safari lodge underway at a reserve in Maharashtra. So let's welcome Ms. Anusha Bajpai.
So today I'll be presenting two of Studio Lotus's projects, looking at the zero-energy approach to design across varying scales and typologies. For these projects, we have worked closely with EDS, Environmental Design Solutions, who is our sustainability partner, and they help guide and advise us for most of our projects when it comes to energy and climate responsive design. So when we talk about, when we initiate a project and when we are talking about sustainable building design, for us, it's really an integrated design approach, which means from the onset, every decision that is taken, every consultant who we speak to, every vendor, before every line that we draw on paper, it is really about making sure all stakeholders are aware of what we are trying to achieve in terms of sustainability, in terms of climate responsive design. And the first step for this would really be like the step zero would be ensuring that the client is completely aligned with this particular vision. And in our journey, in our experience, we feel like that's what really makes a very successful climate responsive, energy efficient project, is when the client completely understands the value of what we are trying to do, not just as the building is come up, but even after handover, the way they use and operate the particular building, when they refurbish it, remodel it, the basic foundation is in place in terms of what we are trying to achieve with sustainable and responsible conscious building design. And then, of course, coming to the parameters that we would be more comfortable and familiar with, such as restoring the natural features of the site, looking at the orientation, massing, facade design, energy and water efficiency. So those are all features that I'll talk about in the two projects that I present. And culminating, when we're starting from step zero, which is alignment of the client, culminating in the social and physiological well-being of the users. Because the idea really here is that somebody who comes into the property or who uses the building on a daily basis, how can what we are trying to do permeate their basic experience? We are not just talking about energy efficient air conditioning systems, but when we're talking about climate responsive design, buildings that are porous, buildings that breathe, buildings that truly make you feel connected to the natural environment, and how much that can add value to the daily user and create a benchmark in terms of sustainability and climate responsive design. The first project I'll briefly touch upon is the production facility for Organic India in Lucknow. Now, here was a project where synergy with the client was the basic principle of how we started, because they believe that, Ayurveda is about zero harmful side effects. The same way they wanted their production facility to have zero harm to the built environment or to the natural environment. And to the extent that while we have achieved a LEED Platinum rated building with them, they are now looking to achieve a LEED Zero building, because they are really trying to ensure that they are net zero in every aspect of their functioning. So the way we approached this particular project was when we looked at all of the construction, the production facilities in the neighboring area. They're basically just sheds with poor insulation, poor daylight penetration, and we wanted this structure to be a revolutionary experience in terms of how a production facility could be designed, in terms of orientation of the blocks, housing, manufacturing, offices, and packaging, creating mutually shaded blocks, spill out spaces for outdoor experiences, and creating ample greenery to reduce the heat island effect. So the orientation of the blocks has been done in close conjunction with the cardinals. So we're talking about maximizing the openings and optimizing the window to wall ratio along the north and the south faces. So all of the offices and production areas and storage areas which require ample natural light, and along the east and west faces, minimizing the openings, but also providing deeply shaded corridors or shaded windows and openings wherever needed, providing perforated screens using bricks that were available and manufactured locally, therefore reducing the embodied energy of the materials that are being used in the construction as well, incorporating solar panels and natural north light into the production spaces, the triple height and double height production spaces as well. So this is a view of the experience center, which is one of the first structures that you encounter when you're visiting the facility. And this gives us an overview of the entire building and how it performs in terms of the exposed jallis, the skylights, recessed windows. We really minimized the need for air conditioning and artificial cooling in this particular project by maximizing wherever possible naturally ventilated spaces, courtyards, and reducing the microclimate by introducing terrace farming. And these are views of some of the naturally ventilated and open spaces. And this particular project also using filler slabs wherever possible so that we could reduce the amount of concrete that is being used. So we achieved an energy cost saving of 32% by using double glazed units, puff panels for installation. 13% of the annual energy cost is offset by solar panels, while the client was keen to really move this up to 100%. The challenge here was that it was because being a production facility, there was a lot of process energy. The process energy was quite high, which is why we didn't have enough area within our property to install the number of solar panels needed for us to be completely off-grid. So this is something that they're still exploring in terms of having a solar farm close to the site, which could then supply electricity to the property. Playing with the orientation, massing, and the heights of the blocks to achieve mutual shading. Using low flow fixtures, high efficient irrigation systems, native plantation strategy, utilizing the STP water into the irrigation and into the flushing tanks, rainwater harvesting pits to recharge the local groundwater as well. And these were other areas in which we were able to achieve, through which we were able to achieve the LEED Platinum rating. And I'll briefly touch upon another one of our projects, which is the headquarters for Royal Enfield in Chennai. So here was a project, again, where the client's vision, there was a lot of synergy between what they had envisioned for this project as well, keeping in mind the brand value of painstakingly crafted bikes and precision engineering. How can that translate to their headquarters, to their R&D facilities, to their office spaces as well? The profile of the site enabled us to ensure that maximum openings are along the north and the south face, and the shorter faces were the east and west sides. We have the arrival block, the admin block, the cafeteria, the industrial design, and the production design spaces. So looking at the admin block in isolation, knowing that these are basically office spaces, how can we maximize daylight penetration so that we reduce the dependence on artificial light by introducing courtyards so that there can be windows on the east and west faces as well, but these are shaded courtyards. So again, minimizing glare and solar heat gain using a combination of various shading features, which I'll talk about here. So looking at each facade in isolation and seeing what exactly needs to be done, and all of these shaded features were very carefully calibrated in terms of their angle, their orientation, their distance. So it was not a cookie cutter approach towards facade design or towards energy optimization or cooling. Each function, each block, each facade was treated with its own individual characteristics and requirements. And we were able to achieve a really dramatic reduction in the solar heat gain, as you can see, by incorporating these shaded facade shading on all the sides versus if we had not gone for it. So on the north side, again, like I mentioned, carefully calibrating the louvers to ensure that we minimize solar heat gain. On the south side, a really beautifully crafted, suspended system of terracotta tiles, which were locally sourced, and incorporating them with greenery to reduce the ambient temperature of these naturally ventilated courtyards. CFD analysis was done to channel the easterly winds from the ocean into these spaces as well. So all the breakout spaces and the courtyards become really a pleasure to be in by virtue of these systems. Looking at the courtyards along the admin block. So again, we have naturally ventilated spaces, shading by incorporating fins or by incorporating greenery, solar panels. And we were able to achieve 80% of the floor area for 80% of working hours did not require artificial lighting. And the reduction in the overall cooling cost as well. And just the last point is about the air conditioning and how, like I mentioned, each space was looked at separately. So only the offices were air-conditioned spaces. Apart from that, we looked at a variety of different cooling systems, what could be the most appropriate given our particular context, which areas could do without any artificial cooling. Instead, we could have evaporative cooling using the stack effect and process cooling, and of course, naturally ventilated courtyards and spaces. I hope that gave you an insight into how we were looking at two different typologies of projects in terms of program and scale and geographical context, and how we were able to embody some of our principles into them.
Yeah, Ms. Anusha, along with that, one of the delegate was asking a question relevant to your submission. Can you address that as well?
Definitely.
So, posted in the, Mr. Ashish was asking, was there
a facade consultant? No, I don't believe we worked with a facade consultant for this particular project. All of these, the shading devices that we used were done through extensive R&D between us and along with EDS, along with the client, so that there could be specific responses to each facade. But otherwise, the idea being manufacturing kind of client and headquarters was to keep it very simple. So the terracotta was the element that we really pushed the limits in terms of how we can apply it and use it, not just as a roof tile, but how it could be used on the vertical facade. But if I look at the east and the west facades, they're all kind of very straightforward. We have used exposed cement concrete blocks, exposed steel structure. So it was about really bringing it down to the bare bones, the structure, the skeleton, and seeing how can we optimize it.